They say the Arctic is the quietest place on Earth. But men who have survived long enough up here know that silence is a lie. Because every silence hides something: pressure groaning beneath the ice, storms gathering behind the horizon, mechanical echoes buried inside forgotten Cold War ruins. Up here, the world is never truly still. It just pretends to be. But nothing in the Arctic's long, brutal history compares to this paradox. A radar station that died in 1964, its generators empty, its towers collapsed, its power grid ripped apart by storms, somehow came back online in 1981. Not partially, not accidentally, not because of a passing signal glitch. No. It returned in a way no man, no machine, and no recorded technology can explain. The pulse that triggered everything was detected at 02:14 hours by a routine U.S. Air Force recon sweep. A single, clean radar signature. So precise, so mathematically perfect, that no modern emitter could have produced it by chance. A frequency belonging to a facility that had been declared permanently dead nearly 20 years earlier. That facility was known as KX-31, one of the smallest modules in the original DEW line, the distant early warning chain built to detect Soviet bombers crossing the polar route. KX-31 was never important. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't big. It didn't carry nuclear sensors or advanced tracking arrays. It was just a node in the ice, a lonely, wind-beaten listening post staffed by 8 men and 2 rotating diesel generators. When the DEW line partially collapsed in the mid-60s, hundreds of stations went dark. But KX-31 wasn't simply abandoned. It was erased. Its equipment stripped, its records buried, its coordinates removed from operational maps. And yet, on that frozen January morning in 1981, it woke up, quietly, deliberately, as if responding to something that had been waiting beneath the ice for decades. The pulse repeated exactly once more, 11 hours later. Not 10, not 12. Exactly 11. Mathematically impossible coincidence, or an intentional schedule. Alaska NORAD Command reviewed the data 3 times before accepting an uncomfortable truth. Whatever was transmitting was not malfunctioning. It was operating with purpose. The signature was traced. The origin confirmed. KX-31, dead, frozen, forgotten, was alive. A rapid response team assembled at Thule, Greenland. Not a full excavation force, no news crews, no officials. Only 2 specialists were chosen. Captain Mason Hale, Arctic survival and site reconnaissance expert, one of the few who had logged missions near the abandoned DEW line modules. And Dr. Lydia Karlsen, a power systems engineer whose research focused on Cold War microreactors and unconventional energy systems once tested for remote northern bases. Together, they were briefed on a single instruction: confirm reactivation status, retrieve source, do not publicize any structural discovery made beneath the facility. Those last words were odd. Neither Hale nor Karlsen knew what structural discovery meant, but they were told something else, something far more unsettling. The 1981 pulse was not identical to the 1960s radar emissions originally recorded from KX-31. It had changed. It had evolved. It had adopted a modulation pattern from technology that simply did not exist when the station was abandoned. Which meant only one thing. The signal did not just wake up. It had been waiting for when the Arctic ice would shift, waiting for when satellite coverage would be minimal, waiting for a time only it seemed to understand. And now, Hale and Karlsen, armed with nothing but outdated schematics and a transport helicopter, were heading toward a place that should have been silent forever. But KX-31 was no longer silent. It had already spoken. And somewhere beneath that frozen ruin, something had listened. The helicopter dropped Hale and Karlsen on a slab of fractured ice, nearly 5 kilometers from the coordinates. Any closer, and the turbulence from the rotor wash risked collapsing the aging structures buried beneath the snow. The pilot didn't wait. Nobody wanted to hover above a place sending signals it shouldn't understand how to send. From here, the two specialists continued on foot, visibility shrinking, wind sharpening into thin needles that sliced across their jackets. But even through the whiteout, something became clear. The terrain wasn't natural. Lines, angles, contours. A shape was emerging from beneath the ice. Man-made geometry where only emptiness should be. Hale slowed first. The main communications tower, collapsed decades ago, now lay half-submerged in ice, like a broken metallic rib. The panels were shredded, the cables fossilized and tangled. Everything looked exactly as a forgotten 1960s outpost should look, except one thing. A plume of steam, thin, almost invisible, curling upward from the central module. Not smoke, not electrical burn. Heat. In a place where even diesel oil freezes into paste. Karlsen knelt, brushing her glove across the ice. It was warm, not melting, just resisting the cold, in a way no dead station ever could. "What's heating it?" Hale asked. "That's the problem," she replied. "Nothing should be." They moved toward the entry hatch. It hung twisted on one hinge, bent as if something inside had pushed outward with controlled force. Not violence, but pressure. A careful, measured opening. The interior greeted them with a silence far heavier than the wind outside. Dust lay in frozen sheets. Equipment sat crooked. Wires dangled like roots from an ancient tree. Everything was exactly how a dismantled Cold War relic should appear, until Hale noticed the prints. Not footprints, indentations, circular, evenly spaced, mechanical. Something had moved across the floor, pressing into the frost, and it wasn't human. Karlsen stepped past him and entered the main operations chamber. She froze. The radar dish, a massive parabolic array suspended at the center of the room, its spine cracked, its motor rusted solid. Yet, it moved, not constantly, not smoothly, just one slow, deliberate rotation, then another, each exactly 312 seconds apart. Hale timed it. The rhythm never broke. Karlsen climbed the platform, examining the motor housing. "This motor is dead," she whispered. "The bearings aren't turning. The shaft isn't moving. The dish is rotating without the motor." "Then what is driving it?" Hale asked. She didn't answer, not because she didn't know, but because she refused to guess. A vibration rolled beneath their feet. Subtle, low, not seismic, more like a pulse from deep below the foundation. Hale followed it toward the maintenance corridor. Halfway down, he found a door welded shut. Not by ice, not by collapse, by somebody. Fresh metal scoring lined the edges, newer than the 1960s steel around it. Someone had sealed this room from the inside, long after the station was declared dead. Karlsen joined him, shining her flashlight along the welds. "These marks, they're not from standard equipment. The cuts aren't military. They're cleaner." "Cleaner how?" "Laser cut clean." Hale stared at her. "That technology didn't exist here." "Exactly." The vibration returned, this time stronger, accompanied by a faint harmonic tone from behind the welded door. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded patterned. "Do we open it?" Hale asked. Karlsen didn't answer, because at that exact moment, something inside the sealed room tapped the steel panel. 3 quick, perfect knocks, as if acknowledging that they had finally arrived. And then silence. For nearly a full minute after the knocks, neither Hale nor Karlsen moved. The cold inside the corridor felt heavier, thicker, as if the station itself were holding its breath. Hale finally broke the stillness. He lifted the small cutting torch from his pack and braced it against the welded seam. Karlsen grabbed his wrist. "Wait." Hale frowned. "We're not leaving it sealed." "That's not what I mean." She stepped back and played the flashlight across the metal. These welds weren't done to keep something in. They were made to keep something out. Before he could answer, the vibration under their boots returned, stronger this time, rising in frequency until the steel beneath them trembled like a tuning fork. A low harmonic tone spread through the corridor, resonating through pipes and broken wires. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, and it matched the cadence of the earlier knocks. A message, one they didn't understand. Hale cut anyway. The metal hissed and curled away, exposing a breach just wide enough to pull open. The moment. The door surrendered. A wave of warm air rolled out, unexpected, humid, and carrying a faint metallic scent. Inside was a chamber that did not belong to any dew line facility. The architecture was wrong. The proportions were wrong. The entire room seemed built around a single object embedded in the floor. A cylindrical module, smooth and seamless, its metallic surface glowing faintly through thin frost. It wasn't attached to any power cables. It wasn't bolted down. It wasn't part of the original station. Karlsen's breath left her in a slow, stunned exhale. That alloy, I don't recognize it. The module pulsed, once, like a slow heartbeat. Hale backed up. It's active. Karlsen knelt, running scanners over the surface. It's drawing power from pressure, literally converting ice compression into electricity. Nothing from the 60s could do this. The scanner beeped. Karlsen frowned. It's transmitting. To where? Hale asked. Not outward. She showed him the scan. The signal wasn't broadcasting in any known direction. It was being sent downward, straight into the ice beneath the station. Before they could process that, the module pulsed again, stronger, and every dead monitor in the control room outside flickered to life for a split second. Ancient glass screens flashed lines of static, numbers, shapes, too fast to read, and then went black. Karlsen scrambled to the nearest console, pulling out cables and patching her equipment directly into the decades-old relay hub. What she recovered was not a radar echo. It was a data packet, encrypted, segmented, layered in 3 separate modulation patterns. Each pattern corresponded to a different abandoned station on the former dew line. 3 modules lost under ice for decades, all arranged along a perfect, curved alignment. Triangulation nodes, Karlsen whispered. Not early warning radar. They were repurposed for something else. Hale pointed at the last coordinate on the screen. What were they tracking? Karlsen decrypted the final layer. It wasn't a location. It was a depth reading. 2.3 miles beneath the ice. Something was down there. Something large. And something warm. She didn't get a chance to explain further. The module in the floor emitted a rising whine, a resonance that built like pressure inside their skulls. Lights they didn't know were still wired flickered back to life. Snow shook loose from support beams. Then the dish in the operations room began to rotate faster and faster, until it locked into a fixed angle, pointing not toward the horizon, but toward the ice below them. Hale steadied himself, gripping the railing. This isn't random. It's preparing for something. Karlsen's handheld scanner vibrated in her gloves. A countdown appeared on the display, numbers decreasing in rapid succession, synchronized with the module's rising hum. "Tell me that's not what I think it is," Hale said. Karlsen swallowed. "It's a scheduled activation." She looked up at him. "And it ends in less than 6 hours." The station groaned. The floor heated. The module pulsed like a living thing. And somewhere far beneath them, the ice shifted, as if something answered. Then the countdown skipped a second, jumping abruptly, as if whatever was underground had just acknowledged their presence. The countdown bled seconds like a heartbeat under stress, fast, uneven, accelerating. Hale and Karlsen backed away from the floor module as the temperature rose sharply, steam lifting from the ice-coated walls. The hum deepened into a low, resonant vibration that made the bones behind their ears ache. "It's not just activating," Karlsen said, trying to stabilize her scanner. "It's responding." "To what?" Hale asked. She didn't get the chance to answer. The lights snapped on across the station in a single synchronized flash, bathing the corridor in a sickly pale glow. Electrical systems that hadn't seen power in 2 decades suddenly roared awake. Consoles buzzing, old printers grinding, broken indicator panels flickering like dying fireflies. Then the sound started. A slow, metallic groan rippled through the walls. Not from the machinery, from the ice beneath the station. Hale felt it first, pressure shifting upward, as if the glacier itself were breathing. Karlsen steadied herself against the wall, staring at the scanner. The depth readings were climbing. Something was coming closer. "Whatever is down there," she whispered, "it knows the grid is awake." The countdown hit 0. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, everything did. A blinding pulse erupted from the module, shooting up through the ceiling and down through the ice simultaneously. Every screen in the operations room ignited, filling with cascading symbols, coordinates, and geometric shapes that didn't match any Cold War system. Hale shielded his eyes as the massive radar dish above them spun with violent precision and locked into a downward tilt, pointing directly at the ice shelf beneath their boots. The whole station vibrated in harmony with the pulse. Karlsen scrambled across the control room, connecting her equipment to the flickering mainframe. A final data burst flooded her device, dense, structured, unmistakably intelligent. "It's a map," she said. "Not of the Arctic, of whatever's under it." Hale looked through the cracked glass of the operations bay window. The ice outside was glowing faintly, blue veins of light spreading outward like circuitry awakening beneath a frozen skin. "How many nodes?" he asked. Karlsen's expression tightened. "All 4. Montana Line 42, Bering Line 12, Arctic Node A9, and this one." "All active," she nodded. "They're forming a sphere." The grid wasn't scanning for Soviet bombers. It was imaging the object beneath the ice, in 3 dimensions. A deafening crack split the distance. Hale spun toward the sound, part of the ice shelf collapsing in the distance, a plume of frost erupting upward as if something below had shifted violently. The sphere completed its formation. And for 4 minutes, exactly 4, the entire grid held steady, transmitting data into the depths. No broadcasts outward, everything downward. Then, without warning, the power cut. Lights died. Screens went black. The hum stopped. The entire facility exhaled into silence. Karlsen checked her device. The transmission log ended abruptly with a single line of coordinates, much deeper than their earlier readings. A depth humans had never reached. Then her eyes widened. "Hale." The last scan. Whatever's down there, it moved. Hale didn't ask how. He had felt it too, the faint, rising tremor beneath the floor. like a distant engine turning over for the first time in centuries. They left the chamber quickly, stepping back into the dying twilight outside. The helicopter's beacon blinked through the storm in the distance. But halfway across the ice field, Hale stopped. A thin line of warmth radiated through the ground beneath his boot. Not from machinery, not from the sun, from deep below. Karlsen checked her scanner one last time. The countdown had reappeared, reset to a new cycle. The next activation wasn't 20 years away. It was 11 hours. Hale looked back at the station, silent, frozen, dead once more. Except it wasn't dead. It was waiting, and whatever was under the ice was waking up with it. The Arctic was no longer quiet. Something beneath it had finally stirred.